I'm Bernie, Land Use Director. I'm going to do a roll call to confirm that all the members are here and can hear me. I'm just going to call your name. Please say aye. Matthew Allison.
Aye.
Tanner Cole.
Here.
Matthew Brenner.
Here.
Okay, so good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. And this meeting of the planning board is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance of the Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread, and all town facilities are currently open on a limited basis from 10 to 2 Monday through Thursday, and by appointment outside of those hours. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by Zoom video conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Using an internet-enabled device or telephone, you can go to zoom.us or the Zoom application and enter tonight's meeting ID. Tonight's meeting ID is 890-9413-9393. Again, 890-9413-9393. If you do not have an internet-enabled device, you can call in by telephone. The number is 888-475-4499, and you would enter the same meeting ID. Please note this is being recorded, and most attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware folks can see what you have on the screen. Please don't screen share. Please don't have anything that you don't want someone to see or be recorded on your screen. This meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast, possibly over cable and also on the town's YouTube channel. With that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bernie. So we've called to order. We'll start with public comment. Is there any public comment from the public or the board? Any hands? I don't see any hands.
There are no hands, no.
Very good. We'll move right into our first agenda item is an update by the town manager on 925 Massachusetts Avenue. Is Heather with us?
She
is.
She was. There she is.
See me?
We can hear you.
Okay. For some reason, my video is not, I turned it on, but it's not working. So thank you for having me on the agenda tonight. Tonight, I just wanted to give an update on what steps have been taken in the last 2 years towards the redevelopment and reuse of 925 Mass Ave. And also when we get to the point of being able to sell this property, whether your board thinks it should be auctioned as allowed by the Massachusetts general laws for foreclosed properties, or to put out a request for proposals for reuse of the property, which would specifically address the future reuse of the property. So I'll start by giving a brief description of the property and then go into the steps that have been taken so far to address the existing conditions. So 925 Mass Ave is the abandoned gas station that is directly next to the post office. It's located in the Village Center District. The property consists of approximately 0.19 acres of land with approximately 119 feet of frontage and about 1,800 square feet. The building is about 1,800 square feet, concrete block, wood frame on a concrete slab. It's a single-story building, and the gasoline pumps have a self-supporting overhead canopy structure as well. Our records indicate it was originally a blacksmith shop from the 1830s to the early 1900s, and subsequently was used as an automotive repair and service shop, with fuel pumps documented as early as 1936 with different owners, the most current owner being L&M Service Center, Inc., which was operated out of there until the early 2010s. The property has been in tax title since 2005, and we have maintained it in tax title and will be ready to foreclose once we can determine that there are no imminent hazards that we would be responsible for if we foreclosed. One of the first steps that we needed to take was to gain legal access to the property in order to conduct a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment. I worked with town council and our tax title attorney and the Board of Health to gain a right of entry by filing an administrative search warrant in September of 2019. So this allowed us to gain entry, do an inspections, assessment, and sampling. It included soil analysis, groundwater analysis, installing monitoring wells, and other hazardous material sampling. That was all allowed under the administrative search warrant. We hired an environmental consultant that we use for other town projects to conduct the phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is the first step in the assessment process to determine whether, through visual inspections and records review, whether a phase 2 is warranted. This was performed and completed by February of 2020, and which did recommend moving forward with a phase 2 environmental site assessment. The cost of a phase 2 environmental site assessment is much more expensive than a phase 1, as it is more labor intensive. It requires borings, installation of groundwater monitoring wells, lab work, preparation of a health and safety plan, a quality assurance project plan that's submitted to the EPA, and a hazardous material survey of the building. So in November 2019, I submitted a brownfield site nomination and EPA site approval form to the Montechusett Brownfields Group that was administering the Brownfield Site Assessment Grant that Montechusett Regional Planning Commission received in June of 2019. The land use director and I attended the Montechusett Brownfields Group meeting at that time to pitch our project to receive funding, and the Brownfields Group approved our request in the amount of $30,000 to cover the cost of the phase 2 site assessment. The phase 2 site assessment was completed in the fall of 2020, and as is required, has been submitted to the Environmental Protection Agency for review and comment before it can be considered a final document. And I believe that was forwarded to you today, just for your records. So it's still in draft form until the EPA does their final review and comment. Out of that report, it was determined that hazardous building materials were identified as asbestos, lead-based paint on exterior surfaces, light ballasts and transformers that may contain PCBs, and fluorescent light bulbs that may contain mercury. It was also confirmed by ground penetrating radar survey that there were 5 underground storage tanks, as well as a septic system. And lab analysis identified various soil contaminants that exceed Mass DEP standards, with 6 out of the 8 borings having at least one exceedance of Mass DEP standards. Lab analysis also identified the total lead in the groundwater above Mass DEP standards in one of the monitoring wells. Since the results of the environmental site assessment clearly identified that there would be cleanup costs involved, I requested additional funding through the Brownfields program under the Montechusett Brownfields Group and received $6,000 in additional funding for a phase 3 environmental site assessment in November of 2020. And this will identify the costs of cleanup. I also applied for $250,000 in funding through Mass Development Brownfields Redevelopment Fund in September of 2020. That if awarded would assist with the cost of cleanup and redevelopment plans for the property, but was notified that the project is not yet at the stage where it would be eligible for this funding. Mass Development did commit that they would work with us. So when we are eligible, we can reapply for cleanup costs. The next step that will need to be taken is to do a request for interest, to gauge interest by private properties in redeveloping the property. And this will not commit the town to any one party, but will provide us and Mass Development a demonstrated interest in the property that will make it eligible for cleanup funding. So getting back to why I came to speak with you tonight is part of my annual goal as it relates to this project was to meet with the relevant town boards to get their input on whether auctioning the property off through the foreclosure process or putting it out for an RFP for reuse of the property was more preferable. But I just wanted to restate that we're not yet at this point, but it would be helpful knowing this in advance for planning. So are there any questions related to what update I gave? There's a lot of information, I know.
That was a great update. Very thorough. Thank you very much. That's long since been a very poor eyesore. Hopefully not too much longer.
Yes, I feel like we've made good progress towards eventual redevelopment. It's just a long process to go through for each stage, but we're getting there.
Excellent.
So would the planning board prefer it to go be an RFP process or the tax auction process is their preferred method? I assumed the RFP would be because that could identify preferred uses for redevelopment of the property versus tax foreclosure auction would be just the highest bidder.
Well, as just one member, and we have only got 3 with us tonight, I don't want to speak for the group, but it is a very small parcel. It is, however, within our village center zoning, so it's preferential for a smaller lot. And we certainly would need to have discussions about it to come up with an answer, I believe.
That's where I am on the topic as well. I don't know enough to just kind of shoot from the hip and have a concrete opinion that I'm confident in.
Okay. All right. Well, whatever questions you have as far as follow-up, feel free to reach out to me through Adam or directly. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. So is there something that you're looking for from us in some kind of a time frame?
So we're definitely not at the stage where we're need to plan for an auction yet or an RFP. We'll need to own the property at that point. So there's some work to be done. So like I said, I'll be putting out in the near future a request for interest to see what potential private parties, what their interest is in the property, not committing the town to anything. So I would say time frame, 3 to 6 months would be helpful. So if you know much sooner than that, that would be great for us to plan.
Excellent.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I guess I have a couple of questions in terms of how this whole process works out, because technically we don't own the property right now. And the thing that concerns me is it seems like the cleanup cost is going to be significant. So what happens if you have 0.19 acres, which isn't a huge area, and it costs $300,000 to clean it up? I can't imagine a private party coming in wanting to buy the property for that kind of money if it needs to be cleaned up. So I don't know, I feel like we're in kind of a delicate situation here, because the minute you take ownership of it, you take on the liability of the cleanup, and we don't have funding because we don't know where it's going to go. It seems like a little bit of a chicken and the egg type situation.
Yes,
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can address that question.
please do.
So the phase 3 that we got funding through from the Brownfields group will identify estimates for the cleanup costs. And from there, the next step would be to do the request for interest. That will allow us to reapply for the Brownfields funding through mass development, which is up to $250,000 for cleanup cost. And as long as there's no imminent hazards, which is would be one more step in the process to do testing for, we would not be liable under Mass General Law for the cleanup costs, but we would be, so then we would be eligible to take the property at that time and then receive the funding through mass development costs.
Well, I mean, I think to Tanner's point, I don't think we'd want to take it if it's going to cost us a whole bunch of money and there's not likely going to be anybody that wants it. Am I missing something?
We would get the funding through mass development. The cost would be borne through that program for cleanup.
You specified a dollar amount, but what if the cleanup exceeds that?
That's why we're getting the phase 3 done to identify the total costs.
Okay. So we're not fully there yet. We don't have all the answers.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. Very good. So this is just kind of a heads up that this is coming down the pike.
Yeah, these are the steps we're taking towards that, with that end goal.
Excellent. Any other questions for Heather?
No, sir.
Anything else, Tanner?
No, that was it. I mean, it just seems like a challenging situation. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned and see how it pans out.
Yes, yeah, certainly. Pretty much everything to do with town government is challenging. But very good work. I appreciate the information and the update, and we look forward to having further conversations.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay. So I'm sitting here looking at it on the GIS. I have to go back to our agenda. Where is it? That's it. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, next we have a public hearing for North End Subaru, 757 Chase Road. Do we have a representative with us? Excellent. Mr. Almonte. So we do have actual stuff to do before we open the hearing. We have to read the notification, I suppose. So here it goes. The Lunenburg Planning Board will hold a public hearing on March 22, 2021 at 6:35 via Zoom video conference to hear and review applications for site plan approval and stormwater management permit under Chapter 250, Section 8.4 and Chapter 204, respectively, of the Code of Town of Lunenburg for construction of a new Subaru auto dealership at the same location as the existing dealership at 757 Chase Road, Lunenburg, Mass. Excuse me. Owner applicant is Empire Management Corporation, 171 Great Road, Acton, Mass. Materials are available for viewing at the planning office, 960 Mass Ave, Lunenburg, Mass. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast. Do I have to read this again, Adam?
No.
Okay, very good. So we have opened the public hearing, and I will give you the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi. My name is James Almonte, registered landscape architect with Land Design Collaborative. Before we start, and I know it's an open hearing now, I just had a question. I understand there's only 3 members tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we understand that this has not gone to the ZBA for what was it, a special permit that they required?
That's correct. Yeah,
So-
we did have a hearing scheduled, but there were some issues with the Zoom link, so we had to reschedule and re-advertise.
Sure. So it was a question on our end whether to actually open the hearing now or wait until you got that approval, because without that approval, the hearing is kind of moot.
Right.
So with that in mind, I just want to make everybody aware of that they haven't gotten the permit from ZBA. So this is kind of just an informational. We'd like to keep you on track and well behind. So
Right.
I'm
So
sorry.
the members that aren't there, are they able to get brought up to speed?
Yes, we have what was the Mullins rule.
Okay.
Well, they'll just have to sign a paper saying that they've reviewed the previous meeting, and then they can vote it.
Okay. All right. There's Brian Lafferty from Empire Management Colonial Automotive Group is also on the call as well. So I don't know if he's.
I'm right here. Thank you all.
I can hear him.
So with that, we'd like to move forward then, and we appreciate the planning board meeting with us, understanding that, again, we haven't gone to ZBA yet. So this is a proposal for site plan approval for the existing Subaru dealership located at 757 Chase Road. And we have the existing conditions plan up on the screen there. Appreciate that. So as you can see, the existing Subaru dealership is located right where the Lot 2 note is. Empire Management Colonial Automotive Group also owns the Mazda dealership to the south, the vacant lot to the south of that. And they also own the home at 777 Chase Road. So most of the property is located within the commercial district, with a small portion of the house lot located in the outlying district. The site gently slopes from the center of the site to the west to 2 detention basins located at the rear of the site, and then to the east to a closed drainage system in Chase Road. Wastewater is treated with a septic system located at the rear of the site, flows by force main to a shared system for both car dealerships. Potable water is serviced by 2 individual wells for the dealerships, and the house lot is on its own septic and well. There are wetlands located along the property lines to the north and south, which have been delineated and survey located. Customer parking is located on the south side of the Subaru dealership, in front of the dealership, and then some employee parking located in the rear, and the rest of the paved area is for vehicle storage and display. Other than 2 small, I just lost the plan. All right. I just lost the plan.
I dropped it, and I thought the aerial was a little bit clearer what you're talking about with existing.
Okay, perfect. Oh, there you go. Okay, so other than 2 small uncurbed mulch islands located across the front of the property, it's basically just open pavement from the site right out to Chase Road. There's really no defined curb cuts at this point. And it's kind of been that way since the 1960s, when this site was first operational as a car dealership, with the first showroom being built in the early 1970s. And it was operated by the Heikelas from that point all the way up until 2005, when Empire Management bought the 2 dealerships and then received a special permit to continue operating the site as an automotive dealership use. In 2007, they bought the vacant property to the south and received a special permit for that property as well. So as part of the proposal, Adam, if you wouldn't mind going back to the
Yep.
PDF. You can probably just go, perfect. So as part of the proposal, the applicant is proposing to phase construction of a new, there you go, that's probably the plan that is most appropriate. So they're proposing phase construction of a 27,800 square foot dealership, basically in the same location as the existing dealership. The existing dealership has gone through several renovations over the years. It's has multiple floor elevations. It's completely inefficient. So this construction is to comply with Subaru's branding standards and also to just to better service their existing customers. So there are no new employees required to service this facility. Again, it's just proposed to better service their existing customers. So as I mentioned, it'll be phased construction. So the 23 service bays at the rear of the site will be constructed first while the existing dealership remains operational. Once that is constructed, the rest of the dealership will be raised and the new showroom and the remainder of the building will be constructed, and it will all be attached at that point. Again, so we are proposing to better define the curb cuts along Chase Road with landscape islands across the front of the site, which will extend from in front of the Subaru dealership all the way to the Mazda dealership, except for the driveway openings. We didn't continue them in front of Mazda dealership because it's for one couple of reasons. It's not part of this proposal, and just the proximity of the Mazda dealership. It's close proximity to the property line. There just wasn't room for it, and we would like to have vehicles being able to travel across the front of the site. So by adding the islands, we would just eliminate the ability to do that. So that's basically why we're stopping where we're stopping with the islands. With the landscape islands, we feel like the vehicle circulation through the site will be much more improved over existing conditions. It will allow for the vehicles to still continue to be displayed across the front of the site. And we would also have designated customer parking and employee parking areas as part of this development.
I think we have a question, Jim.
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Tanner?
I just raised my hand on the Mullen thing because my understanding is you can miss one meeting, but not more than one. And
That's
I
correct.
just wanted the applicant to be aware of that we're kind of in a difficult spot with that. So that's all.
Okay.
But at this point, we just proceed, just with the understanding that basically the three members that are here may be the only ones that can vote on this project. So that's all.
As long as you're all in favor, we're fine with that.
Well, I guess at this point we've already started the hearing, so it's kind of a moot point. But I
Right.
just was trying to clarify that before we got too far into it. But
Thank you.
it's fine.
Okay. I appreciate that.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, Tanner. Also, to add to that, we've also got a fifth member who very seldom joins us. These are both simple majority, right, Adam?
That's correct.
Even though the stormwater is a labeled special permit, it is a
It's
simple majority.
no longer labeled special permit.
Oh, even better. So that's just to give you guys the full picture here.
Okay. We appreciate that. Okay. So just wrapping up quickly. So some of the other improvements include upgrades to stormwater, which will basically follow the same patterns as existing conditions, but obviously will be upgraded to meet the regulations, the current regulations. We know we've got peer review comments that we received from Graves Engineering, so we're working through those now. Other improvements include landscaping along in front of the building and on the side of the building, as well as within the landscape islands and the vehicle storage areas and parking lot. There is actually a net decrease in impervious surface by about 3% over existing conditions. So there's an improvement there as well. And then just as part of this proposal, the house lot will be separated onto its own separate parcel when this is all done. So there were a couple of waivers that we requested, which are included in our cover letter. There was one regarding the datum that the existing conditions plan was prepared on. So when Empire took over management or ownership of this property back in 2005, the existing conditions plan for that at that time was prepared on an assumed datum. And all of the renovations and improvements to the site have always been used on that or have been performed on that assumed datum. Recently, Brennan Consulting took over the ownership of the existing conditions plan, confirmed the existing conditions, set, I think, 3 benchmarks out there now. So we like to continue to perform this work on an assumed datum. That was one of the waiver requests. Another one was a waiver from the stamped architectural elevations. We have conceptual elevations at this point, which are included as part of this plan set, but nothing warranting an architectural stamp at this point. Obviously, when we move further along with the project, we'll have complete architectural floor plans and elevations at that point. And then we are also requesting a waiver from the impact reports as a redevelopment project, and no new employees required. Also going through the process of the notice of intent with the Conservation Commission, we're requesting a waiver from the impact reports as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeking special permits through the ZBA. We're meeting with them on the 14th of April. We've already met once with Conservation. We're scheduled to meet with them again on the 7th of April. So we have those 2 hearings as well, running concurrently with the Planning Board. So again, we appreciate that, you're meeting with us tonight. We basically just wanted to get the Planning Board's comments if possible, try to get, we've already received peer review comments. We're working through those now with Graves Engineering. We received comments from a couple of different departments within the town, Fire Department, Board of Health, DPW, I think has commented as well. So we're working on those written responses and at this point, and like to get the Planning Board's comments and kind of wrap them all up together and issue a revised set of plans when it's appropriate.
Excellent. Super. So I have a couple of big picture questions.
Mr. Chair, I had a quick question in terms of how the lots break down. On the left side of the plan, it says proposed lot 12.5 acres.
Correct. Right. So that will include basically the vacant lot to the south, the Mazda dealership, and the new Subaru dealership. So it's everything you see there except the house lot, which is kind of cut off there. If you follow the property line, that's it right there.
Okay. All right. I was just assuming the dashed line is the edge of the pavement, or
That's basically the limit of work.
oh, okay. All right.
If I could jump in for a minute,
Sure.
Brian Lafferty from Empire. Just to give you a brief overview from the business perspective of what's going on here. Jim's in charge of the technical stuff. I guess the philosophical stuff and what we're doing, I guess, falls into my lap. So just to kind of give you a broad perspective, a couple of things are going on here. One, the automobile manufacturers, in this case, Subaru, they require updates to their facilities, no different than a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts or anybody else that has a corporate image they want to adhere to. So it's anywhere from 10 to 20 year span, they require an upgrade to the facility to meet their marketing standards and to meet their meet what their customer expects. The other big piece that's going on here is we're all aware of is the world is changing quickly in the way we do business, and no more evidence is necessary than what's gone on in the last year or so with the COVID situation. And the automobile business is changing rather dramatically, like most retail businesses. And we just don't do business the way we used to. Probably 75 to 85% of our sales are generated online. We very seldom see what many of us saw when we were kids or young adults, where the family would get out on Saturday and drive around to different automobile dealerships and look at cars and test drive cars and stop, spend 3 or 4 visits before they bought a car. It just doesn't work that way anymore. As I say, most of the sales are generated off the internet, and probably somewhere around 60 to 65% of the vehicles we sell, the people never even see them until they come to pick them up. So it's a different business, and it's more service oriented. And we, have to improve our ability to service our customers, not specifically from a volume perspective, but from a time sensitive perspective, as we all know that everybody wants immediate gratification now. Nobody wants to bring their car at 7 o'clock in the morning and leave it there until 5:30 at night anymore. They want to come in at 10:30 and be out of there at 11:30. So those are the goals and the reasons that we're looking to upgrade the facility. When we first bought that business from the Heiklers, and we bought it, if I'm not mistaken, 13 or 14 years ago, we did a minor facelift to the building, but we didn't really improve the facility in any significant or substantial way. So Subaru has been after us for a couple of years to get this done. So that's the point of what we're trying to do here, and make our facility a much more efficient facility, both from a functional standpoint for us doing business and for the customers. The service department's going to be, right now, the service department there's 3 separate entrances to the service department in the existing Subaru building. In the new facility we're proposing, there's only going to be 1 entrance. So I suspect and I hope that we're going to significantly decrease the amount of traffic that's around the automobile dealership itself internally, where all the customers will be directed into the same driveway to come in to service their vehicles. They'll go through a drive-through reception area, and then they'll bring it out to the back of the lot. So we move all that traffic and customer interaction off the showroom area in the front Chase Road side and move it all out back. So that's, I just want to give you a sort of overview of why we're doing this and conceptually, from our perspective, what it does for us and does for our business. And quite honestly, it's going to be a much nicer presentation to the public and to the street when we're done. As Jim mentioned, our plan is to build this in 2 phases, essentially build the service department in the back, and continue to function out of the showroom. If you folks were on the planning board back when we did our first facelift 13 years ago, there was a small house on the property, and we operated the sales department out of that for about 6 months. But in this case, we're going to continue to operate the sales department out of the existing facility while we build the service department, and then we'll take down the showroom and add the showroom onto the rear building. That's the sort of pragmatic aspect of the construction. So, and as we're more than happy to answer any questions, I do appreciate the board taking the time to meet with us tonight. We had planned to be there at the ZBA first, and Jim and I, and everybody tried to sign on to the meeting, and they had a glitch with the Zoom link and couldn't get it accomplished. And the attorneys decided that they couldn't hold that meeting, so it had to be rescheduled, and with the typical notice requirements. So we ended up with a little bit of a time swap. We were at the planning board before we get to the ZBA, but we fully realized that the ZBA permits, it's certainly incumbent on us to make sure those permits are in place before the planning board is in a position to give us the permits we need from the planning board. So, and we, as Jim mentioned, we did meet with Adam, who was very, very helpful, and we do appreciate the fact that he was able to answer a lot of questions for us and get us on a reasonably good track and smooth process from our perspective, which doesn't always work that way everywhere, but Ed did a nice job with us. So any questions you may have, Jim will probably answer most of them. Thank
Sure.
you.
Well, I'd like to get back to my big picture questions. For one, I would assume that Mazda dealerships have the same requirement as Subaru dealerships.
It's a little bit different with Mazda. Mazda has asked us numerous times to expand the facility and change the facility. And right now, we've made a business decision not to go forward with any Mazda improvements. More than you need to know, but the way the automobile industry, and I assume other industries work, their sort of power over their franchisees is directly related to how successful the company is able to make their franchisees. Subaru is just done a terrific job over the last 10 or 15 years and expanded their market penetration and done a great job and is very profitable. Mazda is not quite the same, and they don't have quite the same leverage. And right now, the current facility is sufficiently large enough to handle the business that's anticipated for the reasonable future. So yes is the answer to the immediate question, but there are no immediate plans whatsoever to do anything with Mazda other than perhaps a facelift at some point. If Mazda changes their logo or their colors or that sort of thing, but that would be all that we would anticipate in the near future with Mazda.
Sure. No, the only reason, well, there's a couple of reasons I asked. For one, I wanted to know if we were going to be looking at a vacant Mazda dealership in the near future. And for two, I was curious as to why the improvements, given the constraints on the lot by the wetlands and the well, why that wasn't done together. But that's totally your call. I was just curious.
Perfectly fair question. And no, you're not going to be looking at an empty Mazda dealership. We operate both those businesses together. And as you folks have lived in Lunenburg for a long time, Mazda has been there, oh boy, I think 30 years now, and Subaru 40 or 50 years. So they're not going anywhere. We're just not in a position right now that we just don't need to upgrade the Mazda facility. We've been very consistent with the number of cars we sell at Mazda through the years. Certainly not as many as we sell at Subaru, but sufficient that, we certainly want to stay in the Mazda business, but we don't need more facility to do it. As a matter of fact, right now we use the Mazda facility to supplement our Subaru facility in some cases. We don't fully use our service capacity in the Mazda building, and we sometimes use that for some of our Subaru service work, mechanical work.
Sure. Excellent. Well, any board members wish to speak up? We also have Mr. Walsh with us. He could speak to his review comments. So.
My only comment is I think we'd be best served to make sure we have as much of the board as possible before we get into the nitty gritty or vote on waivers. That's all.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
I agree.
Okay. If Mr. Walsh would like to give us his well, I guess give us his review, I suppose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Jeff Walsh. I'm with Graves Engineering, peer review engineer for the planning board. What I'd like to do is not get into the details of my review, but if it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to the highlights. I just got 3 or 4 things that I'd like to bring up to the board.
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome. I do know I did have a conversation last week with Michael Scott, the professional engineer who stamped the plans and is working with James on the preparation, I understand. And those conversations basically had to do with the new stormwater regulations and the requirements thereof. But without getting into the details, the 4 things I'd like to share with the board with respect to the proposed plans is first, the reorganization and better defining the entrances off of Chase Road. Very important to keep vehicle circulation defined, especially to people coming into the facility who don't come there on a regular basis. They need to, as they approach the entrances, they need to understand where they're supposed to go, how they're supposed to enter, how they're supposed to exit once they're leaving the facility. And the only definition that really is out there right now is the parked inventory cars along the road. So the proposal to come forward with the landscaped islands is a very drastic improvement, in my opinion, to vehicle circulation on and off of Chase Road. And in addition to that, the islands, as you can see, they're getting into the Chase Road right of way, but nevertheless, they're going to force the operators of the facility to park inventory vehicles on the site property, which I believe right now, if one were to take a hard look at it, the inventory I think is probably being parked somewhat in Chase Road right of way. So again, the islands, they're great for defining the traffic circulation and also great for making sure the inventory stays where it needs to be, which is out of the right of way. The next thing I'd like to speak of, I realize from the conversations tonight and from my interpretation of this facility, judging from the age of the buildings and such, that it's been there for a while. And years ago, car carriers, drivers would pull up, a lot of times park out in the street, unload, and drive the cars into the lot and then be on their way. With the increased traffic on any kind of local roads, including Chase Road, for the safety of the operator of the car carrier, as well as for safety of the public, it's important to get those trailer trucks off the right of way and into the site when they're going to be offloaded, and do so in a forward motion. And then when the driver's done unloading his truck, he can drive out in a forward motion. In my opinion, gone are the days of offloading from a public way and from backing into the site or out of the site with a delivery vehicle. Moving on, I mentioned a few minutes ago, I spoke last week with the folks at Land Design Collaborative about the local stormwater regulations. They have the comments. I've also been in touch with Rob Oliver, the DPW director in Lunenburg, and about Mr. Oliver's and my conversation started about quantity of water going to the drainage system in Chase Road. And then when I learned of the new regulations in place, that now speaks to quality of the runoff as well. So I don't think we need to belabor the point. I do understand the design team knows what's in front of them with respect to the stormwater. But I would like to share with the board that during my review, I tried to estimate how much of the impervious area of Chase Road drains to the two sets of catch basins that are along the front of this property, and compare that to the amount of impervious area from the front of the site that also drains to the Chase Road right of way. And my estimate was there's about 75% of the tributary area is coming from the automobile dealership, mostly the front of the Subaru and a little bit in the front right corner of the Mazda. Once you get up to the Subaru building, at some point there's a drainage divide and then things start flowing toward the back. But nevertheless, it's a substantial area. I walked down when I visited the site and took a look at the catch basins. There's a double catch basin by the single family home owned by the applicant, or what looks like a single family home. And then I took it upon myself to go across their property and see where water would go if it couldn't all get into the catch basins. And sure enough, it's evident that water bypasses or just can't get into the catch basin quick enough. And there's been erosion of a slope going down toward the wetland that goes along the brook. And efforts made to try to stabilize the site and protect from that erosion, but nevertheless, it looks like it's an ongoing challenge. So addressing the quantity of water to Chase Road will in fact improve the operation of the Chase Road drainage facility and will improve that ongoing erosion problem. Unfortunately, this is fixing sins of decades past, but nevertheless, I think it's important. And that is it. I kind of lumped together the quantity and quality of stormwater into one discussion. So those are my 4 points, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I was able to review your comments, and they were very thorough, and they were very focused on stormwater. And I liked your comment about the access for the for the delivery trucks. I think I'm not sure, they're showing 22-foot drive aisles and 22-foot wide entrances. Not sure they're going to facilitate the maneuvering requirements of the truck.
Yeah, if I could just address that comment.
Sure.
At this time. So we did include some vehicle maneuvering exhibits as part of this plan set. We did one for fire apparatus, and we also did one for the car carrier. I don't know, Adam, if you wouldn't mind scrolling towards the end of,
Yeah, I think the last couple of sheets.
Yeah. There's a couple. Yeah, there you go. So this is for the fire apparatus. We just wanted to show that they could maneuver through the site and get to all the critical areas. So that's that one. And then the next one is the car carrier, where they would come in off a Chase Road and basically maneuver around the back of the building. So anywhere on site, they could, wherever it made sense from an operational standpoint, they could unload the inventory from the car carriers. So we understand that getting off of Chase Road is critical.
All right. Some comments on this. You've got, I assume it's a fire apparatus vehicle, non-articulated. I think it would be a good idea to speak. Well, so you've got the picture of the car carrier.
There's two different plans. This is the car carrier one, and then the previous plan was the fire apparatus.
Okay. We would need to confirm with our fire chief that that suits his vehicles.
Yep.
And also the car carrier goes over the curb and through a light post.
We can go to that plan.
In front of the Mazda dealership. So that's just stuff like that I was concerned about.
Right. Yeah, we can adjust that. Make sure that they can get through there. If we have to widen the island, we can do that. But we'll make that adjustment.
Very good. And again, this is just a preliminary, so we're just giving you ideas that we're going to focus on when we get to the nitty gritty.
Totally appreciate that.
Certainly. Yeah. And again, I've lived here all my life, almost 50 years. And I did purchase a Subaru a few years ago from this dealership. So I'm very well aware. I'm one of the old school people who went and test drove and sat at the dealership for a long time deciding. So we're not all gone.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could I speak to the point of the car carrier for a moment?
Please do.
Okay. I don't know what Subaru uses, but many of the car carriers, if not almost all the car carriers that I'm seeing now, it's been a few years since I measured one up. Unlike the days of past where it was a shorter tractor and a long trailer, they now are more of the tractor is almost the same length as the trailer, and the tractor also has all the hydraulics on it and carries some of the cars. And it's got a smaller fifth wheel that sits down low at the rear of the tractor. And James, I think you'll find that it not articulates, but it's got easier turning maneuvers than what the semi type of truck does have. And that type of vehicle would track better than the semi trailer that's shown on sheet EX 102. I can't remember when I've seen new cars delivered on this type anymore. I'm sure they're still out there.
Right.
But nevertheless, the other type would probably be a little more favorable for your turning maneuver review.
Okay, appreciate that. We'll look into that, see if we can get those specs.
Okay. The other thing I've tried to do with auto dealerships over time is is look at grades going in and out, but those were not problematic here. A few years ago, I had a problem with another site somewhere else, but nevertheless, I don't see any problems with grades here. Vertical curves and abrupt changes in vertical alignment with a problem on that
Right.
other job. Thank you.
If I could just comment on one of Mr. Walsh's comments, mostly because it's sort of near and dear to my heart. His first comment related to making sure the customers know where to go when they come in. And I don't work functionally at all the dealerships. I handle primarily the real estate stuff, but having spent 20 years on the other side of the business, there's nothing that frustrates me more than driving into one of our dealerships and watching the customers not know where to go. And that's one of the reasons, that we're doing this sort of work. And Mr. Almonte is on his 14th, I think, 13th or 14th dealership for us. So he knows what we want. And it's critical. What we get rated on by the manufacturer is the customer experience. And one of the big things about it, we all know you pull in the store and you don't know where the heck to go. You get aggravated from the beginning. So we definitely appreciate what you said, Mr. Walsh. And that is one of our primary concerns, that we direct the service customers to where they have to go and get them out in the back of the facility. And we direct the sales customers into a place where they can come spend some of their money, like Matthew has in the past.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. So who else has questions or concerns or comments?
Mr. Chair, are we looking for just general, or are we looking to get more into the weeds right now? Because I have a couple questions, but they're fairly exacting, but they could hold off till another time as well.
Well, we definitely want to give them some direction on where we're leaning to what we see right now, but we don't want to get weedy because they may be looking at some serious revisions. I don't know. So yeah, let's stay out of the weeds and just generalize, I guess.
In that case, I think I have one general question, which is I just see the snow storage on the west side of the lot, and that large section, and I see that it's blocked off by part of that section of 42 storage spaces. Is that an issue at all for this kind of setup, or is the inventory lower in the winter? Or I just see that and I wonder how you're going to get snow to that if it's being blocked by cars in waiting to be sold.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so this, unlike most towns, actually, I mean, most towns require us to show snow storage areas, but they don't quantify the area. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the Lunenburg requirements are for snow storage. But these areas are probably bigger than what we need for snow storage. And typically if we have large storms and it does take up a large amount of real estate, they get removed, snow gets removed from the site. I mean, it's critical, obviously, to have storage available for vehicles. So these areas that are shown on the plan are probably much bigger than what we need, but we wanted to show and demonstrate that we can meet the requirements of the bylaw. And if we had to, provide the area that's necessary to meet those requirements.
And further, to speak to the spaces that seemingly block the access to it, I've gone by there numerous times before snowstorms, and it looks like they're vacant because they pull all the cars out of the lot.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And that is all open pavement behind Mazda too. It goes pretty much right to the edge of the wetland, as that's the existing line of pavement. So we just hatched the area that's basically the limit of work for this project. So that is all open pavement back there.
Okay, I see that now. Thank you.
If you don't mind, the way the snow removal process works at almost all the dealerships is once we have word that there's likely to be some amount of snow, we put as many cars inside the facility as we can. And then every one of our dealerships, we have 16 dealerships, everyone has a different sort of snow removal plan depending on their own facility and their ground. But what we then do is then we stack all the cars into a localized spot, which maybe, say the right rear of the building, we'll take all the cars that had prior to the snowstorm and park them all together. So we have some maneuvering room. So if I'm understanding what you're saying about the parking spaces, how do you get to that snow removal location? When it starts snowing, there won't be any cars parked in that area. That's one of the maneuvering areas we'll be able to move all the snow to. And we essentially work on a 1/3, 2/3 sort of overall theory that we want to take up less than 1/3 of our existing lateral space when we stack the cars together prior to a snowstorm, leave 2/3 clear, and then we'll clear that 2/3 before we start moving the cars back into any of the areas. So the only practical way to do it is if you ever left your car in a parking lot overnight and see what it looks like if you leave cars in parking spaces when a snowstorm, you know exactly what I mean. We get them all stacked in a corner and then clear it out in the morning.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you. The other question I have is just trying to envision this property. The long retaining wall on the north side between the dealership and the residential house. How tall is that?
I believe it's only a couple feet tall.
Okay,
3 or 4. I don't think it's 4. It's 2 or 3 feet.
Right.
great. It didn't look like it was much, but I want to make sure I was reading it right. Thank you. That's all my questions right now.
So I'm pretty sure I'm not sure which code it is, but anything over 4 feet has to be stamped by a structural engineer, I think. Or
Correct.
Designed. Okay,
Then that's wherever we can, we keep the walls under 4 feet.
exactly. 3.5 feet.
Yeah.
Matthew, that wall's been in Lunenburg longer than you.
Oh, it
No.
probably. Okay. So existing non-conforming, perhaps.
Well, actually, I think I could be wrong, but the one along the northeast corner of the property is actually a proposed wall.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Neither.
And it is less than 4 feet.
All right. So what else do we have to let these fellows think about until we meet again?
I think, excuse me, I think the one thing that I have, and I did speak to the fire chief today, and I know that Jim, you said you're in receipt of the comments. He was questioning about the fire suppression system for the building and how that's going to be fed and maintained. So that's a question that will come up as you drill further into the details. So just, have that in the front of mind as you start looking at some of that stuff.
Yep, we are aware of that question, and we will address that.
So there's no sidewalk there now, right? Is there?
Along the frontage?
Yeah.
No, there's nothing there.
So there's a large vacant parcel between the dealership and the nursery, correct? And there's
Correct.
There's two
picturing
vacant parcels.
two. Okay.
There's one that the dealership owns, and then to the south of that, I think it's almost 5 acres, and that's where they were going to build the deck hockey rinks 3 or so years ago. It's currently for sale, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And I actually think the solar field is on the other side of that, and then you run into the nursery.
Okay. So it's a silly question, but I need to ask it. There's 3 spaces in the service area that look like they come up against the wall. So I'm assuming that's a concrete pad where they have 3 exterior doors.
Correct. Yeah, there would be access from the exterior.
Okay. Well, you guys are the professionals, so I guess and that's inside the building, so I'm not going to be too concerned about maneuverability. But there's no aisle to back into as far as like what would require for a parking area outside. But that's your call.
Yeah.
No, well, by looking at the review comments from Mr. Walsh, you've got some work to do on the stormwater.
Right.
And then that'll probably get added to when you meet with conservation.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So Adam, we don't have a minimum aisle width, do we?
I thought that we did.
I think that every time, but I look at so many different town regulations regularly. They're showing one 24-foot wide entrance and the other two are 22. So I don't know about the aisle, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing something about an opening, an entrance width.
Minimum 20 feet for a two-way driveway.
Okay. Okay. And I'll also mention it now that again, I'm just one member, but I'm going to bring up and push for if this does get approved, that we have a condition that no longer is it allowed to unload in Chase Road. Because that is a state road, and I think the posted limit's 45. At least 40. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're in the automobile business. We're used to that.
Excellent. And also another comment is that you're going to have to apply to Mass Highway for the curb cuts.
It's actually not a state highway.
It's not.
It's not. No, we have checked that. Checked the maps. It's not a state highway.
Okay.
So.
And I can confirm that per my discussion with Mr. Oliver.
Okay. Very good. And actually, it's not curb cutting. You're curb inducing. You're
Right.
curbing.
True.
And if it was a state highway, Mass Highway would be running to sign that permit.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. True.
Okay.
Mass Highway doesn't run to do anything.
That's even a better point.
Very good point. Yes. But they would be eager.
Yes, they would.
Yes. Okay. Anything else before we continue this public hearing to a date certain? A time and date? Well, public hearing, is there any public that may or may not wish to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, yes.
Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. I was wondering if I could, because it's a hearing, if I could make a comment or question some of the presentation.
Of course you can. Please do.
Thank you so much. My first question is about parking, and specifically Mazda parking. It's my understanding that we have at the annual town meeting some warrant articles that deal with parking within the town, and I wonder and would hope that kind of an article, if it's successful in passing, would not impede anything that is done on the Mazda side of things, because I look at this as the interests of the property have merged, and notwithstanding the fact that we are talking about Subaru, I think we have to look at the big picture, and I certainly don't want to, as a taxpayer and a townsperson and a concerned business person, I certainly don't want to create anything that is going to be put Mazda in a disadvantage. So I mentioned that and wondered if Mr. Gooding could comment on that. And I have a couple other issues as well.
We'll come back to you.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Do we have a response?
So once the bylaw is adopted, it would be applicable to new developments. They are proposing to modify an existing non-conforming use at the zoning board. So one would infer that this would be wrapped in with that modification, that the blessing of the modification of the existing non-conforming use would include, and I believe it does include, some of the parking they have out in the front. So it would include the remainder of this site, since it is all
Okay,
as one use.
If I can
fine.
make one comment on that subject. And first, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch the gentleman's name, but I appreciate anybody that spends their time to speak in support. So thank you. I have not read the whatever articles proposed at town meeting, but I would propose that what we do in the automobile business is not always parking. Our customers park. Our other vehicles is inventory storage and inventory display. And as you can well imagine, with 16, 17 dealerships, we've had these conversations with numerous communities. And they have all, without exception, made the distinction. Parking, as we typically know it, somebody drives in somewhere, gets out of the car for a short period of time, does some shopping or whatever, gets back in the car and has to drive out. What we do is significantly different from that. Although we certainly need parking spaces for our customers, the other spaces are not parking. So again, I haven't seen the regulation, and I appreciate Adam's comments because we are addressing the site with the board. So I would presume that we can manage our way around that. But on a just a philosophical perspective, it's different than parking.
And the proposed calculations, minimum calculations for this use, require one parking stall per inventory unit, which you're going to kind of do anyway. And you show a significant amount of display and inventory space. And then the remainder of it is calculated on square footage and repair bays and the number of employees.
That's typical of what we deal with. In our business, we're more than happy to provide all the parking spaces and display spaces we can find.
Excellent. Well, that brought up another good point. The difference between parking spaces for customers versus inventory spaces for storage, which might be helpful to that cause if future plans identified what areas are for the public and which areas are not.
We normally do that, and if this plan is not done that way, I'm going to cut Mr. Almonte's pay this week.
It is labeled that way on the plan. It is labeled for display, where it's storage, and what's customer and employee.
That's true. It is.
I found that.
Yep.
I found that incredibly easy to understand. I appreciated that demarcation.
All right. As I said, I'm going back to Mr. Rogers to have his follow-up questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to be very clear with this point. My reason for bringing this subject up is I really don't want anything to happen that would be problematic for the folks that are running both the Mazda and the Subaru dealership. And I want to get it on the table so that people understand that we talked about this thing, and there is nothing that would come back and say, well, you can't do this because we passed this ordinance, et cetera, et cetera. That's all. I want to make sure that they're protected, which brings me to the next point that I would like to make. We've been blessed in Lunenburg to have two major automotive dealerships, Chapter Lane and North End, and both of them have been absolutely fantastic public operations and corporate citizens beyond reproach. And I want to publicly say that is part and parcel of the reason that they're here before the planning board tonight, because they do what they tell people they will do. They service the heck out of customers, and they do the right thing, and that's great because they have to expand and change their business the way to accommodate all this. So I publicly want to thank them for what they have done for the town of Lunenburg in that capacity, and the business operation is right up there, and I think that we as a community should do whatever we can do to make sure that we get this plan, do what we have to do, but let's get the plan done so that they can work as expeditiously as possible to conduct their business so that they can continue to do a real good job for Lunenburg. The last thing I would like to comment on is the parking warrant article. I was late to the meeting because I was out jogging to Gardner and Athol, and I came back and I missed the first part of the meeting. So I was wondering if I might make a public comment about the parking at the end of the meeting. That's all.
Oh, of course.
Right. And I didn't hear or notice that anybody on the board that knows me didn't start laughing by saying, running? He can't even walk.
We were being polite, Dave.
Okay. All right. So at the end, I will get back close to the end so that I can give you my 2 cents worth on the parking bylaw. Okay.
It'll be at least a nickel, I'm sure, but okay.
You know me well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Mr. Rogers.
Well, you fellas are lucky to have him in your corner. He carries a lot of weight in this community.
No pun intended.
We appreciate the support. Thank you.
You don't know that.
You're
for sure.
welcome. Okay, thanks.
Very
I
good.
will unmute myself. I will mute myself now. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So, is there any other public comment on the public hearing that we're having? Before, was there something?
Just one thing, when you pick out a scheduled date for the next meeting, would you check with Mr. Rogers, make sure he's available?
Yeah, so we've got April 12th and April 26th.
I would say you don't want to go before the 26th since they won't have gone to the CBA yet.
I think that's a great idea. When was your conservation meeting?
So we're scheduled,
April 14th.
no, that's April 14th is ZBA.
Concom is
April-
the 7th.
Yes.
7th is Concom, yeah.
Okay, so then you'll have input from both of them. Now, Adam mentioned earlier that he had comments from the fire chief. Do you know, Adam, if he has any turning templates or turning information that he can pass on?
He didn't mention that, but I do have in my notes to follow up with him on it.
Very good. Thank you. So if there's no further public or board comment,
I just have a question regarding the peer review comments.
Sure.
Is the board and the town okay with us working directly with Jeff and Graves to get those resolved?
Absolutely.
yep, that's actually preferential. Yep.
Okay.
I thank you.
As long as he's good with that. Yeah.
I'm
and-
good with that.
Yep.
I've been given that latitude on other projects, and I think it's been a very efficient overall process. And anything I need to share, I'll pass along through Adam.
Yes, I totally agree. That was phenomenal with Bright Farms and their schedule.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess at this point we'd be looking to continue to a date certain, which sounds like the 26th at probably 6:30.
I think that probably makes the most sense.
It's April 26th. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That works for me. Are you good with that, Brian?
Perfectly fine.
Okay.
As long as Mr. Rogers is available, I'm coming.
That'd be great.
Okay, so I'd take a motion from either Matthew or Tanner.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we continue to this hearing to April 26th
At 6:30.
at 6:30.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Super. We're gonna have to do a roll call vote. All in favor, Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Cole.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Good night, guys. Mr. Chairman, before we move on to business, I see that later this evening you have Bright Farms. Did you want me to stick around for that?
That would be a question for Adam, because I'm not sure what that is either.
No, that's just an update. I know that you're in the process of looking that over, so they're not formally on for any review. It's just an update that they've submitted this information.
Okay, great. And I did start looking at those plans, and I'm going to have some comments.
All right, great. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, is there anything on the Leominster Shirley Road that we're going to need him for?
No, they've requested a waiver from all that stuff.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good night. Thank you.
So next we have 305 Realty LLC at 305 Leominster Shirley Road. We have a waiver request, public hearing, and a site plan approval. That's a lot. Sure, I have a ditty to read on that one too.
They've actually requested waivers from the public hearing portions of this process.
Oh. Waiver request. Oh, it's a waiver request of a public.
Yes, correct.
Have we done that before?
You have. Again, it's reuse of a pre-existing building with no changes to the building or site. This is similar to what the board went through with 88 Mass Ave, albeit with an engineered plan. And the board has issued a number of these waivers for reoccupation of existing buildings.
Do we have any idea of what the new business is going to be?
I think that you have representatives from that business here, or at least from Hannigan.
Yes, sir. You have Christopher Anderson with Hannigan Engineering.
Welcome. So, I'll give you the floor. You can go ahead and update us and give us your idea of what we're here for.
Sure. So we're before the board tonight for the repurposing of an existing commercial lot at 35 Leominster Shirley Road. This property is located on the north side of Leominster Shirley and contains two existing structures. The number 305 building, which is located along the immediate frontage of Leominster Shirley, and a back building that's utilized as storage for vehicles and whatnot. The property is approximately 2.5 acres of land. It's commercially zoned. There is parking on the front porch of Leominster Shirley for the primary 305 building that's used as more of an office building, with a secondary entrance that provides access to the back portion of the property, which has historically been used as a storage yard. It's the intent of the applicant 305 Realty LLC to convert the property into a contractor's yard and utilize the office building as the headquarters of GBC Construction. We recently received the special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the intended use. Because of the special permit required to come before the board for site plan approval. We are requesting several waivers, one of which is the waiver of the public hearing. I think I kind of want to have that determination made first. I don't know if you would agree or not, just for paperwork and, getting everything on the same line. I don't want to jump out of line if something's going to happen on the road.
If the board's willing to do that first.
So the first thing you want is us to discuss waiving the public hearing. Was there also a request to waive the site plan approval?
No, just the public hearing portion of it. Instead, in lieu of the public hearing, do a public meeting, which this would constitute as such.
Okay. I honestly don't remember having waived the public hearing portion of any application before, Adam. Can you refresh my memory?
8 and 10 Mass Ave, both the pet store when that went in, and when the car dealer at 8 and 10 went in, and then again when that business switched from the antique shop to the detailing. The public hearing was also waived for Safe Light Auto Glass at 35 Mass Ave and for Smokestack Roasters at 39 Mass Ave. All of these were done based on the fact that the buildings and the sites weren't being altered and that it was an interior fit out and reoccupation of existing sites.
Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you. And that was a long list of corrections.
Well, if I could just chime in, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we waive site plan review and thus waive the hearing as part of it? I don't recall doing site plan review on the smoke shop.
The smoke shop, I'm not sure about, but they certainly did on the car dealership that was in there beforehand. And I know
Okay.
that when
That was
Safe Light,
before my time. But
correct, and I know that when Safe Light came and when Smokestack Roasters came, again, it was a site plan light. It was okay, you're doing this in this existing building. Oh, look, you're showing us this parking layout. This meets our parking requirements. We think it's a logical layout. We think this is a safe way to do that. We think that we can issue you a waiver from the public hearing on site plan approval and give you this document that says that you're clear to move forward with this plan that you submitted.
okay, that's a little confusing, but my recollection is we just granted waivers. They presented their case and then we just waived site plan review and the hearing together based on what they presented, but I'm not trying to split hairs by any means. I just want an understanding of exactly what we're doing tonight. So we're going to do a site plan review, just no hearing.
Yeah, and I think what they're looking for is the same structure that those they're not changing the site. They're saying we are going to use this site in this way. Do you find that this is an acceptable layout and use of this site within the use that the zoning board has approved? I mean, I guess if you want to call it a waiver of site plan, it is in the same sense that the others have been. But historically, the board has at times conditioned those waivers, so they do function as a site plan.
Okay, I guess my only concern would be, in my mind, you either waive site plan review and say, go on your way, do what you want to do, or you have a hearing and conduct the normal process.
Then I would say that this is a waiver of the site plan review.
Okay.
And I think, and Chris, I think could probably expand upon this. I think the issue or the reason it's phrased that way is this property is in receivership due to the previous owner having some legal and financial troubles. And the potential owner and the applicant for this approval is trying to ensure that all of their I's are dotted and T's are crossed, but is also trying to meet a very stringent timeline outlined by the courts in order to move through the entire due diligence and purchase process.
Correct.
Okay. Well, given the information that we've gotten already and the request, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I didn't like this site plan before when Alpha applied for it. I don't think there's enough sight distance coming around that corner, especially for large, heavy vehicles. And I would like to see, well, I'm definitely going to ask for sight distance on the plan and it be engineered. And I'd also like to further state that I would love to see the entrance move down the 100 feet or so to the westerly driveway entrance. The entrance to the back site move down. That would give an extra 100 feet for somebody whipping around that corner to stop for a huge truck coming in or going out. It's just a bad. There's very poor sight distance, and it's a fairly steep downhill grade. So your stopping sight distance is increased on a downhill grade. And I don't recall exactly what the posted limit is there, but pretty sure it's more than 30. So, given that information, and again, I am just one person on the board. So I guess the request is before us to waive site plan approval, not just the public hearing. Is that what I understand? Do I understand that correctly, Adam? Yeah.
That seems to be the consensus.
I'm not interested in that myself, but again, I'm just one person.
I mean, from my perspective, I can certainly appreciate where the applicant is coming from and they have a timeline to work with. I mean, just from my experience with the process, being a contractor that has a special permit to operate my business in Lunenburg as a contractor's yard, my personal opinion is that that's the more difficult part of the situation. Site plan review tends to be more of a review process, like tweak this or change that. But I don't know. It is a pretty big site and there's a lot going on, and I don't know. Kind of a tricky situation.
So, not knowing exactly what your time frame is, do you have time to wait for the potential fourth member to join us? I mean, I don't want to ruin your project.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak? My name is Chris Valenti. I'm with 305 Realty and GVC Construction. I'm one of the owners.
Yes, please do.
I've been listening. Is there some specific questions I can try and help you answer with respect to the timelines?
I was curious if you would be interested in waiting until we had more members, because I personally am not interested in waiving site plan approval, and it sounds like that's what the request for the waiving the public hearing has turned into.
We've been engaged in talks with on this property since sometime last year at this time, and it's taken us this long to get to this point with all the various different challenges that have presented themselves with the property being in receivership. And unfortunately, we do not feel that we can move forward with the project without full support of the planning board. We've already gained support of the zoning board at this time. We do not intend to make any changes to the site. That was never our envision for this project. And we were unaware of any concerns by the board up until right now at this time that there was concerns about site distance or the entrance of this property. So it would be, yes, detrimental to the project moving forward if we had to wait until there was a fourth member. We're trying to get this thing wrapped up and move into the property within the next 2 to 3 months if possible. If we have to kind of redesign the project and go back and look at things, it may kill it.
Okay. Well, I thank you for that information.
Sure.
This is a tough spot. I was kind of by myself the first time. What was this, Adam? About 3? This is just after you got here, or just before you got?
This predates me.
This does. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I was pretty much by myself in this concern. So as far as waiving, it's a simple majority, but does that mean we still need 3?
Mhm.
Well, honestly, it doesn't sound like the use is going to be a lot different. It does sound like there might be more trips per day by the same size vehicles. But as I've kept a track on it, there's been a few skid marks there. I haven't really made formal discussions with the police department about any accidents. I haven't seen any in the police log. I've made my concern known, and just rather than having the property remain vacant, I would prefer to have a business in there. I mean, so I'm an engineer by career, by profession, and that's one of my sticking points is sight distance, and I will refrain from being a naysayer if that's what it takes, I guess. I don't know. I want to hear from Matt and Tanner.
Mr. Allison, your opinion really kind of squares with mine. I don't know enough to know. I'm not an engineer, so I can't just look at this and say I know that there's a safety issue. But upon hearing that there's a safety issue, that's a concern for me. But if it's vacant now, if this is the opportunity for this to be useful property, I guess one of my questions would be, just trying to wrap my mind around this, what are we looking at for a difference in traffic from what has been versus what will be for that kind of potential, for that questionable entryway onto the road? Do we know that?
Well, from experience of the site plan approval of the previous business, they were basically they were making prefab structures, and so they were having inventory coming in and out on large vehicles. But that road is almost all large vehicles. Well, no, it's heavily trafficked by large vehicles. Mm-hmm. My concern is the grade and the sight distance around the corner. But like I said, I'm not aware of any accidents during the tenure of the previous business. So and again, I was not supported by the board then, and I want that to be known as well. So I will go with you guys. So I honestly, to answer your question, I don't think it's going to be any more safety hazard than there was with the previous business, with the contractor's yard. I think the trucks might be smaller. There might be more trips, but they'd be smaller, so they'd be quicker to come in and out, which would alleviate the concern.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I add something to that right now? This is Chris Valenti again.
Please do.
Our crews typically leave this area when we are in Leominster. We're just on the other side of the hill, on the other side of Target. We typically leave between 5 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. in the morning to travel to our various different sites all throughout Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire. There are times where we do take deliveries during the day, but typically our yard is fairly quiet during the day. There's not a lot of activity. We're not like an active lumber company like the previous owners were. We would be a little less of an impact, I think, on traffic. However, that was a concern of ours when we looked at this property, but we were not sure how things were going to go when it came to sight distance and some clearing. We do have some concerns about some of the trees that are in that area around the corner, but those trees are not on our property right now.
Yep.
But we would certainly entertain working with both the board and the Public Works Department to see if we could do some traffic calming measures, maybe additional signage, and we'd certainly be willing to, pay for additional signage or some small traffic calming if we could do that. However, the general nature of the road, and I am not an engineer and I'm not going to pretend to be one, but the general nature of the road is, if I'm not mistaken, the sight distance is impacted by the grade of the hill coming from the Lunenburg side of Leominster Shirley Road. When you're coming around the corner at the quarry, you have both a corner and you have a change in grade, so it's difficult to see. Am I correct?
When you're moving towards Fort Point Road?
Yes.
Yes, that's the difficult.
Yep, that's the difficult part. It's heavily traveled. There's lots of trucks during the day. My trucks go in and out of the asphalt plant all the time. I know that, but I think that's a much larger picture that our project certainly would not be able to support to solve. If I'm not mistaken, Chris, could you maybe answer that or kind of?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now online. Concern. This is the first I'm hearing of it, so I apologize for not being well versed in the required site distances along the site. But it does appear to be a little bit of a blind corner. I think working with the various departments in the town to put additional signage, right along the street on the property, just to aid in warning traffic through the area that there is a commercial entrance in this area. And to Mr. Valenti's point, contractor yards of this nature are usually in and out in the early morning hours and later afternoon hours. While more of a lumber yard typically has a higher turnover just due to delivery nature. So I don't foresee the traffic gain any worse on the intended use. But I do acknowledge that there is a little bit of a blind corner in this area now that I look at it.
Okay, well, I feel much better now to hear that the applicant was concerned as well about the site distance there, which implies to me that they would be interested in mitigating as much as possible. I don't want to belabor the point, nor do I want to obligate you in any way at this point. I think there's already a bunch of signs on that road. I don't think more signs is going to help a lot. But again, I'm fairly confident that this is not going to make that problem any worse. So, and I'm in favor of having a business in there rather than having the lot vacant.
If we're not going to be if it's not going to make things worse, then I would agree. I'd rather property be used. Okay.
So we're still talking about the waiving of site plan approval. Mr. Cole, are you gonna give us your position?
I'm certainly a supporter of small businesses, and I'd like to see the property reused. I struggle a little bit with the waiver process because I know we've had a couple of people come in front of us with projects that were similar in nature, and we told them to go back and get engineering done because they didn't adequately describe what they're proposing. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and it does put us in a spot where we're not only waiving, site plan review, but everything that goes with the process in terms of stormwater management and so on. So this particular property, it's mostly gravel parking, and I feel like, just my knowledge of the previous business and seeing what GVC construction does, I think their use is going to be smaller than the previous owner. So, yeah.
Through the chair?
No, I'm the vice chair.
I apologize. Mr. Allison?
Yes.
I know I don't want to get too far into it without this, but I feel at this point, if I could explain to the board the actual project and how we're going through everything, I think it might resolve a lot of points for their board members.
I'm sorry, you broke up. You think it might what?
I think it might be more advantageous for me to just run through the whole spiel regarding the project, getting everything squared away.
I'm not sure what you're saying. If you're sounding like it might be beneficial to go through the site plan approval.
No, just to explain what the intent of the applicant is. They have an understanding of what the property's end use is going to be.
Well, from what you've said already, there's no intention of there's no site changing required to do what they're wanting to do. And what I understand is that there's probably going to be less traffic and smaller vehicles coming in and out of the site. You're more than welcome to explain whatever it is you'd like.
It's going to be a simple construction yard, some renovation of the existing building appearance. The facade will occur. Some additional modifications interior of the building. Within the actual site, portions of the existing fence will be replaced, so the contractor's yard's fully behind the fence line, and the fence is operating appropriately. And the remaining portions of the property will be utilized as storage for company vehicles. It's a pretty very consistent with the previous use, but still being utilized as a contractor's yard. That's pretty much the gist of the project. If that helps any of the board members with their decision. But like we said, the traffic should be less than what was currently there with the rear yard company and whatnot like that.
Okay. Well, I can also voice my opinion that it does sound like the proposed use, the people would probably be a little bit more interested in keeping their site sightly and decent. I think that after the approval was granted, that they did whatever they wanted, and they stacked material almost twice as high as the fence that were required to screen their stuff, and the fence is falling down. I assume you guys are going to replace that.
Correct. The fence will be replaced.
Yeah. So, it sounds to me like the board is just about in favor of granting that. I didn't get a real clear impression from Tanner.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we grant the site plan review waiver for 305 Leominster Shirley Road.
Site plan approval now.
Yes.
Yes.
I would second that.
All right. Was that a good motion, Adam? Adam,
Yeah,
is that
yep. Any conditions?
what kind of conditions can we place on waiving something?
I mean, essentially, you're letting them move forward with the site plan that you've placed all manner of conditions in the past. I mean, I don't know that there's, you could condition that they replace the fence per the plan, that the layout be done per the plan submitted by Hannigan Engineering, dated this date.
Could we ask them to come? Well, I think the problem here is gaining ownership of the property, and then your time constraints kind of go away. Is that correct?
I can speak to that, Mr. Chairman. Our project moving forward is contingent upon both the zoning board approval and your approval, period. Without it, the project would be, like I said earlier, dead. The plan that we presented to you right now, although it's very unclear here on the screen here because it's rather small, but what I can speak to, and I don't mean to repeat what Chris said, but our plan is to reuse the property as is. However, significantly give the place a facelift. New fence, paint the building, clean it up, actually have real grass, a little bit of landscaping, turn it into something that's not such an eyesore as it is right now, and clean the property up. This is going to be what we consider to be our home as long as the business is in place. So we want to make sure we're moving to a location that's going to support our activities, and that's why we're asking for all of these approvals ahead of time. Contractors' yards are typically very difficult to obtain approval for in lots of towns, not just Lunenburg. So we want to make sure we have your approval before we move forward.
Well, this is the perfect location if there is one.
Yes, it is. We felt the same way when the property became available, which is why we're still doing what we're doing, but we still want to make sure we have all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed before anything goes forward.
All right, I guess I can suggest a condition that the applicant, upon upon receiving the property and beginning their work, that they work with the DPW to potentially address the site distance issue as best possible.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say work with the DPW to address the site distance as much as practicable.
There you go. That sounds good to me. How does everybody else feel about that? Or is it?
I'm very comfy with that.
I'm fine with that.
Do we need to require include that we want them to follow the plan as put before us, since we're technically waiving approval?
Yeah.
It might be in your best interest. At least there's, we're waiving it on the condition that it's laid out in the way that we have done so here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's presented on the development plan. Presented to us, yeah, and it's stamped, so that's good. So there was 2 conditions
So Tanner would have to modify his motion.
to include both those,
Correct.
and then the second would be modified as well?
That's correct.
I'll amend my motion to include the 2 previous mentioned conditions.
And I would amend my second again, or whatever it is exactly I'm supposed to do.
All right, he did it. Excellent. Any further, okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. All in favor? Mr. Cole?
Aye.
Mr. Brenner?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Excellent. Well, thank you for helping us through this arduous process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. And thank you and welcome to Lunenburg. I hope it goes well for you at ZBA.
Thank you.
All right. Let me see. So I'm still confused about how that was listed on our agenda. So we basically just did everything that's on there, but not necessarily in the way that's listed.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, then I guess move on to Bright Farms.
So we finally have the 2 sets of development plans. So if you folks can come in and sign them at your leisure, that would be most appreciated. That's the first one. And then B is Bright Farms. I know this is going to shock everybody, made a few changes to their phase 1 development plan. I've looked at it and I've read over it, and it substantially looks the same. Their letter, which you've all received, essentially says they've raised everything. They've raised the grades on everything a little bit so that they have to do less rock excavation. So they've said, can we do this as a de minimis change? And I said, I'm not really sure. Let me think about that. And I sent it off to Jeff to have him look over it and make sure the stormwater still works and all of that is still going to function with everything being picked up, several feet in some instances. So that's what he was referencing, is he'll have a review back to us. I think he's had it about a week and a half now. So I would expect that we'll hear something back from him. And then, based on those comments, I think would be depend on how Bright Farms would proceed, whether it's a modification or whether they come to the board for a de minimis change for lifting everything up.
Well, the 2 things that come to mind, are we able to discuss this now?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the agenda.
Okay. So the 2 things that come to mind, one is if you raise the site, then something has to get steeper. And if it's pavement, then that's going to affect your runoff. Both volume and then the other thing was, one of the major concerns was the visual impact from the uphill abutters. It's going to get worse.
Mhm.
Those are the 2 things that come right at the top of my head.
And I think it's going to depend on how high they raise it, because if I remember correctly, their cut was 10 or 12 feet.
Into that hill though,
Yeah, but so if they raise it 2 or 3 feet, they're still potentially at a space where car lights and other things are going to be mitigated. But there may be other issues.
Okay. Well, and I'm confident that the review would bring those to light.
Yes, that as am I.
So that basically was just an update,
That's correct.
and we are updated. That you were finished?
Then yes, that was finished. I mean, and once I have something from Jeff, you'll all get a copy of it.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear, so we've got a set of plans to sign now, but
Yes.
But they might
we're
change.
not signing the changed plans.
No, you're signing the original plans from the site plan approval from
Okay.
the original submission. They took their time getting those to us, and then they made changes and submitted those at the same time.
Before we even signed the originals.
Correct.
Well, hey, they're still
I think that's kind of par for the course with this project so far.
they're still growing lettuce, right?
As far as I know.
Okay. So this is a continuation of a public hearing?
That is correct.
So we don't have to read the ditty?
That is correct.
Okay, so we have a continuation of a public hearing for rules and regulations, site plan approval, and special permits. Continued from 3/8/2021. So, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, this is the updated version. It was posted on the website, I don't know, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday after the last meeting. It shows, again, the changes to the sets of plans, and then it also reflects the two other changes that Paula had brought forth in making the stormwater compliant with the standards set forth in section 204 of the Code of Lunenburg, and adding minor on page 13 to the drainage and surface water changes that would qualify for a de minimis change.
Super.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all ready for the warrant?
This doesn't need to go. Once you vote on this, this is done.
Well, these are our rules. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But it is a continuation of a public hearing. So if Mr. Rogers is still listening and he would like to input before it comes to the town floor, is he still with us?
I don't see him.
Well, there's always the town floor. All right. So is everybody comfortable with these? We had a good discussion last meeting. Everybody seemed good with them.
That's exactly what we talked about.
Okay, what do you need from us, Adam? Just a motion and
Motion and a vote.
In motion, we approve the board rules and regulations for site plan approval and special permits.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Oh, do we need to close the public hearing before we do this?
Yeah. I mean, by voting, you kind of close the public hearing. It's a formality either way.
Okay, can you add that to your motion and second?
I would also add to my motion that we close the public hearing.
Tanner?
Second.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? All in favor by roll call. Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Cole,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Very good. Updates are always good. So now we are on to minutes approval for 3/8/2021.
That's correct.
I'd motion that we approve the minutes from 3/8/2021 as given to us.
Second.
Second, excellent. Any further discussion? Roll call, all in favor, Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Cole,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Thank you, Marjorie. Committee reports. Stormwater Task Force. We are actually going to have a meeting tomorrow. First in over a year, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
We're an update from our consultant, CEI. I believe the town manager will be with us. We're gonna have to reorganize because there's new members since our last meeting, and I think the primary focus was just the update from CEI. And again, that's tomorrow. The Agricultural Commission. We met last Thursday, and it was a fairly short meeting, and much to my pleasure, we were able to get our farmers market rules, regulations, and application for 2021 season updated and approved unanimously by the members. We have two market managers. They're both listed on our agendas and our minutes. Michael Fontaine and Shanina, not Pizarro anymore, she's Burns. She married one of our AgCom members. And they have done a fantastic job in the past, and they have continued to do a fantastic job to get us on schedule to have another great market season. Some minor revisions to the market this year. We will be starting in June, not May. I don't remember if it's the first or the second week. We're gonna instead of 10 to 1, we're going to hold it from 10 to 12:30 because we had shy attendance near the end of the market, and it will give the vendors more time to enjoy their Sundays. And again, it was discussed at decent length, and we're also decreasing our fee. Last year, we charged $75 for the full market season, and we charged $10 per diem. This year, we're going to be charging $50 for the full season and $5 per diem, in hopes to kind of offset the impacts. And I think that they've been, I think the local farmers have been a little bit harder hit than average businesses. Maybe not, but it was just an attempt. It was an attempt to help them. So that was the majority of our meeting for the Agricultural Commission. TCP Building Design Committee. I was not at they had a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and they've had a meeting, I believe, since. I think they had a meeting with the Board of Selectmen Tuesday and another meeting on Thursday, and I didn't make either one of them. So I will be as surprised as anyone here to hear the result. Apologies. And Open Space Ad Hoc Committee, Paula's not with us. Capital Planning, likewise. Montechusett Regional Planning Commission.
MRPC meets next week on Thursday, April 1st.
Okay, and the Joint Transportation Commission.
A few minor things coming out of there. One doesn't directly apply to the town, but might be of interesting note to the residents nonetheless, which is there is work that's going to be done in Lancaster at the intersection of 117 and 70. That was scheduled to be a little sooner and is being bumped out more likely to 2023. But that intersection that classically covers that makes long lines waiting to get into it for people from town trying to head towards the southeast portion of the state is going to be improved. So I thought, I saw that. And I'm like,
horrible.
That just made me happy. The other thing is Haywood, and I don't have the exact acronym in front of me, but Haywood and Health Alliance Hospital and related networks are doing their community health needs assessment. And so they are reached out to MJTC about talking to us about some of those needs as well. And I signed up to be on the subcommittee who would meet with them in a separate session, and I'll let us know if and when that happens.
Nice. Very good.
That's it.
All right. Well, that brings us neatly to the director's item.
So I'm going to lump in the ongoing items with this as well, but I'll do the quick ones first. DLTA, you got a packet from MRPC for the district local technical assistance. This is cost-free technical assistance by application to the regional planning agency. It's very housing and economic development focused. The housing is generally focused on a lot of the workforce housing and housing choice initiative programs that the governor has been moving forward lately. I don't know that that's something the board is interested in. If it is, we can put together an application. And I think a lot of the economic development stuff is premature for where we are. I don't think we're in the 43D realm where we're doing expedited permitting sites. And I think the EDSAT, which is the economic development self-assessment tool, would be better focused after the Economic Development Committee has had a chance to meet and start to look at the town and sort of assess how and where and when we want to do economic development. Because what the EDSAT is it's a tool where we look at ourselves and we fill out information, and it helps us determine where we are in meeting our goals for economic development. And best I can tell, we're not sure what our goals are because everybody has sort of a different idea and there needs to be some unified direction. So sort of to dovetail with that, I've reached out to the Economic Development Committee. I'm still waiting for 1 or 2 responses. We're looking to meet at the beginning to middle of April. And that would be the kickoff meeting, and we'd sort of start to move that along. First meeting, reorganize or organize, set sort of a meeting schedule, and then start to look at what the goals might be. On top of that, Chase Road in Northfield, the Pierce Tree Farm is going to be on the town meeting warrant for an agricultural preservation restriction. I believe the town is responsible for about $65,000, give or take, as their portion of the APR, which is 10% of the total purchase price. And it is 10%, not 20%, because we do have an AgCom and a right to farm and all of that fun stuff. I don't think there's anything that this board needs to do, but just by way of information, you'll probably hear a lot about it. I know Conservation and Open Space will be submitting their support to the selectmen, or they've been requested to submit their take on this proposal. I can't imagine either board not supporting the retention of that. My understanding is that it will be put into APR, and that Steve Violet will be looking to purchase it in the long term with Mr. Pierce and his wife sticking around for a little while to guide Mr. Violet through the process of being a tree farmer and help him get his feet under him to do that. And then to sort of tie in the ongoing items, there were two parking calculations, minimum calculations that were, that was my hand, not Tanner's, that were a question last week when we met, that the board was looking for some additional input on, and those were the private camp and the takeout only service. And so I reached out to my planners network, and I talked to a few people, and no one really has a good calculation for those walk-up takeout restaurants. And a lot of the discussion was, the way that it might be done is either by service window or by any number of seating that they provide or the size of the building, which is, I think, sort of a lot of the things that we talked about. And, finding no examples, even speaking to some folks on the Cape, they were just like, yeah, they've just kind of always been there and we just kind of take it as it is, which I don't think is an uncommon tactic. The other being private camp, and a couple of the board members mentioned Littleton and Harvard and Lancaster specifically. And Lancaster does have some language in their bylaw, but it would actually be a smaller parking requirement than what we ultimately landed on. Neither Harvard nor Littleton had any clear designation within their bylaws. So I picked up the phone and I called the planner in Harvard. And after she was done laughing, she said, they've always kind of been here and we've never had any problems. And they just have lots of open space. And when they need to park, they just park there. And I got a similar response from my colleague in Littleton. So I think that what we have adequately services what we would anticipate. And I'm willing to continue looking and searching, but getting those sorts of answers made me think that this is something that universally people have either struggled with or decided to just say, you know what, it's kind of there and it's doing its thing and we don't have any complaints about it now, so we're going to just kind of let it lie.
Okay, well, of course, I have two comments. The first one's just another suggestion. Groton might have something. And the second being that we're not updating our parking calculations and zoning for something that's been there.
Correct.
So somebody could make an application to go on a main road, and if there's inadequate parking, then we're going to be faced with problems that we've had in the past, potentially, not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Did you mention that the zoning is not for something that's always been there?
Yeah, I think that with camps, I think that we have something that adequately renders what we would want. I think the carryout restaurant is a little more tenuous, but again, I think we have something there. It does account for the space in the building, and I think we certainly can look to dial that in a little bit if you would like. And I understand that it's not for what was there. I think it was always there was kind of the approach to the camps. And I think in Harvard specifically, she said, the Girl Scout camp is probably our busiest that we have. And she said, we get absolutely no complaints. They have so much open space that they're able to shuffle cars if needed.
Good.
And I think sort of the basis of our discussion last time anyway.
Sure. Well, thank you for the update. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Can we talk about, we can just talk about this in general now and with ideas and everything else, correct?
Sure.
Okay. My gut says I agree that our camping is probably fine. My gut with the takeout says to include some language about outdoor seating. I know we kind of use the Cherry Hill example of they don't give, you have the ice cream place that doesn't give as much outdoor seating, but people then go sit in their cars. Mm-hmm. And as I kind of think that through, I think if people were suddenly parking on the side of the road, they might not be going to eat ice cream in their cars. And that might be somewhat of a self-correcting issue, because it's different to be sitting in a parking lot rather than have cars going by you at 30, 40 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. For kind of the enjoyment of the experience. So my gut would be to put some language in about the amount of outdoor seating provided. We could probably just tie that really closely to what we're otherwise doing for seating for restaurants that are indoor.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah. tag on a line that says plus one space for every 3 outdoor seats provided.
Something like that. Yeah. I think
And
that's,
that would cover picnic tables, but if people choose to sit on the grass or on a rock, we're not going to, it's not a formal seat.
yeah. But I think that just puts us at least further in the direction we want to go without risking over legislating to the point
Mhm.
that it's not going to be that it won't be effective because it's not doable.
All good input.
And you can make that change during the public hearing.
All right. So is that it for director's items?
That is.
All right. Well, if Mr. Rogers is still watching somewhere, we are almost done this meeting. We've got very little before we go back to the public comment, which I thought you said you wanted to get in.
There he is.
Perfect. Okay, so meeting schedule, 6:30 p.m., remote participation until further notice. Is that still accurate?
That
Adam?
is accurate.
So there's no,
The select board has discussed having hybrid meetings where they would meet at the town hall and all attendees would attend by Zoom. If I recall the last meeting that I saw them discuss it at, there was a discussion that a majority of the board felt that them wearing masks would be more problematic than them being on Zoom because it would obscure their ability to communicate through their faces. But I don't know what they've formally landed on for that.
okay. I will input that there are a number of towns that have gone back to in-person town public like this planning board. And I don't disagree with the mask obscuring the message maybe, but 6 foot distance doesn't require the mask, I think, right? Anyways, that's beyond our scope. So we have upcoming meetings of April 12 and April 26.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman?
We're not there yet. Yes, Dave. Hello?
That's fine.
Oh, well, I was just kidding. We're there.
Hi.
Is this Mr. Rogers?
Oh, yes, this is he.
Okay. What's your address?
82 Highland Street.
For all that fan mail. Yes.
Yeah, all right. 82 Highland, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Do you have a public comment?
I do. It's more of a question about the parking issue, and I'd like to better understand it. And by that I mean, if we could have an example of what you're talking about, say for a 10,000 square foot building, and how many parking spaces you need versus what you're proposing to change, we would be better served to understand the impact of that. And I can't help but think that the equation comes out that you'll be required to have more parking, and I'm not sure that that's really a good thing. But that's the question I have. And the other comment I have is that if we change this parking regulation, we've got some pending situations that we have to deal with. And from my perspective, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Specifically, anything that we do at the Brooks House or the Ritter or the old school and the town hall, would that necessarily come under new standards? And if not, why not? So I have some real questions about the impact of this, and I hope I'll be able to better understand it.
Well, to answer your second question first, all the buildings you previously mentioned are within the Village Center District, and I believe that has its own parking requirements.
Then it does.
So they're not changing.
Okay.
what we are doing, and your first question was a comment about a 10,000 square foot building. Well, it's completely dependent upon the use of that building. If it's just a storage facility for one person, a private company's storage, the parking is going to be much less required than if it was a restaurant with a whole bunch of tables. What we're trying to do is mitigate growth with safety. In the past that I've been on the planning board, we've had a few projects come before us that were basically their success was their downfall. Their popularity grew so much that their requirements, the parking requirements, were not sufficient for the businesses in the locations that they were. And the difficulty that we're faced with is trying to figure out a nice balance, because they're not all going to be in high traffic areas. So they may not need that much space, or they may be on a really small lot and not have the ability to provide that. So there's a lot of gray area when we come up with regulations like this. And if you'd like to input, if you'd like to give us some advice, I would be more than happy to have it. Especially at a planning board meeting, rather than when it's an article in the town meeting.
Right. Well, that's why I'm presenting, because I mean, I think that we can I can better understand, and if it makes sense from my point of view, then that's fine. But I just get the feeling that the new regulation will be more restrictive, and I'd like to know the impact of that kind of a thing, giving a case-by-case scenario, side-by-side, look-see, because I think, we should be doing what we can to help, businesses and that kind of thing. So the other thing, the comment, parking comment I have is it's relatively new, is the CVS parking requirement. I think that's an overkill in terms of parking for that particular facility. I don't ever see anybody parking as you go into the facility on the right-hand side. So I mean, there's things to both sides of this issue. And insofar as takeout windows, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The only thing we have in town right now is Conrad's, and boy, I hope that we don't do anything to mess that up, and because it's good, and they come in and they go out, and I don't see that there's a problem. And I did catch the fact that you have a public hearing, and I wasn't aware of that, so I will defer till you have that public hearing, and I can talk. So that's what I had on my mind. Thank you for taking my call, and I hope you understand my concerns.
Definitely, and I'd like to think that we share those concerns as well. And also, just to plug Conrad's, they're selling cheeseburgers and hot dogs now too.
I know. Yeah. Look, next time you see me, I think you'll understand why. All right. Thank you again. I appreciate the time.
Very good. We'll look forward to seeing you out at that hearing.
Okay.
Okay. So, Adam, do you have anything to add to the meeting schedule?
I don't.
Okay. So, I guess unless there's anything anybody else would like to say?
I just want to comment, the full-size plans are amazing. Wow.
Right? Yeah, good call, Tanner. I like that.
I mean, my wife's laughing at me as I set up like multiple folding tables in the living room so I can look at them. But aside from that, wow, so much easier.
Yep. All right. Anything else? If there's nothing else, then I guess this is, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
I would make a motion to adjourn at now 8:53, 8:54 even.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion about adjourning? Okay. All in favor by roll call. Mr. Brenner.
Aye.
Mr. Cole.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Have a good night.
Night, everybody.